Hi everyone and welcome to Vegan with Jenn. We are here with Dr. Natalie Santiago, known as the Vegan Pediatrician. She is a board-certified pediatrician with over 10 years of experience in community health. She's been vegetarian for 32 years and vegan for 8. And she's dedicated to helping families transform their health and their lives with a nutritious and delicious plant-based diet. So Dr. Santiago, thanks so much for joining us on Vegan with Jenn.
Thank you for having me today.
Of course. So to begin, I want to first ask you, as a pediatrician, why do you recommend a plant-based diet for children?
I recommend a plant-based diet because it does give children all the nutrients that they need for growth and development. It also helps to prevent, some of the more common conditions that I see in children, including and help prevent and also help to pretty much manage certain conditions. So, lower risks of asthma, allergy, and eczema, lower risks of anemia from iron deficiency, lower risks of constipation, so many of the common conditions that I see in children, having a plant-based diet can help with that. Also, the less that children are eating things with preservatives, the overall greater health that they will also be able to obtain.
Okay, that's great, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, you're so young, it doesn't really matter what you eat until you're older, and the whole prevention, isn't as big of a deal. So, a lot of people might ask, is it necessary to even start this preventative diet at such a young age? So I wonder if you can just comment on, how early does heart disease even start, or obesity, or those other chronic conditions?
Yes, so, in recent years, obesity, childhood obesity has started in much younger ages, where we're actually seeing, even toddlers who are battling obesity. And, you may have seen some of the research that shows that, the heart disease in adulthood gets its start in childhood, because of course, children today are eating a lot of the fast foods and convenience foods. And so you could start to see fatty streaks in children's arteries in as young as 10.
Wow.
Probably in the next few years, that's going to be an even lower age. So you definitely want to start now, as young as possible, promoting a healthy lifestyle and healthy diet.
Right, so it's never really too early to start preventing disease.
Exactly.
So it's good for prevention. And so you mentioned children who already have certain conditions, will going vegan really improve their symptoms?
Yes. So I have had, some children who have allergy, like seasonal allergy, and eczema, asthma. And so some of those children, they do a lot better once they cut out things like dairy in particular. And so I have had a few families who the children have done that, and they've seen improvements in those conditions.
Wow, that's awesome. So you've been incorporating vegan diets into your practice, and you've seen a lot of success stories like that?
Yes, I have.
Wow, that's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to kind of transition to safety, because this seems to be a very big concern with vegan diets and children. People tend to think the baby's going to starve, or the child doesn't grow tall enough, or won't grow enough muscle mass because of lack of protein, or whatever they think. So just in general, can a vegan diet be safe for all ages?
Yes, a vegan diet, just like with any diet, it has to be well planned, it has to be well balanced, and that's, like I said, with any diet. So you definitely want to make sure that, that's done. People are always concerned about protein. It's really interesting that no one really thinks about protein unless you're talking about being vegan.
Exactly.
For meat eaters, no one sits and says, well, I'm going to plot out how many grams of protein I get per day. Protein is made from amino acids. Amino acids are in all of our foods. You get amino acids in plants. When you think about it, those animals that people are eating, they're plant eaters. So if they got enough amino acids to build their muscle, and you're going to eat the animal, then why not go directly to the source and eat the plant?
Right.
You get those same amino acids to build your muscle. That being said, children who eat a vegan diet or a plant-based diet from birth, they grow just as well And I like to always reference myself. I ate meat for a great deal of my childhood, and I'm only 5'1". So even we can't conduct a study based on just one person, but certainly I'm proof that eating meat doesn't necessarily mean you're going to grow tall.
Right, that's more genetics.
Yes, exactly. So definitely if you plan out the diet properly and you get, well balanced nutrients from all over the plant world, you're going to have, a healthy child. Yes.
Okay. And so does it take extensive planning to make a well-balanced diet? Should people be, worried about their child getting deficiencies?
Great question. So I don't believe that parents need to turn into dietitians or, go and get a degree. I think that if you pay attention to the main groups, you want to get, your plants, you want something from all colors of the rainbow. That's a good place to start. So you want the vegetables and fruits, all colors of the rainbow. You want nuts and seeds as long as you're not allergic. You want to have, your whole grains, your legumes. And of course, for young children, the legumes with the skin, you want to be careful with that. But as long as you're getting, something from all of those groups, you're going to have a pretty well-balanced diet.
Okay, so the key to meal planning is make sure there's variety in all the different food groups. And you don't need to really count grams of protein or the vitamins is what you're saying.
Correct, because I think that one thing to keep in mind is that if you ask people, do you know someone with diabetes or heart disease? We all do. But ask the average person living in this country, do you know someone with a protein deficiency? And for the great majority, of course, I may because I work in medicine, but for the great majority of us, we don't. So clearly, protein deficiency is not so much of an issue here in this country where we have more of an abundance. So less of a worry here, as long as you're eating, well balanced and there's no major health issues or genetic concerns that may lead to protein deficiency.
Okay. And do you recommend a multivitamin or anything?
Many families do feel better giving their children a multivitamin, and that's perfectly fine. Some parents, especially if they're vegan, they're very sensitive to making sure their child has a vegan multivitamin. That's perfectly fine. Yes, because for children, if they're eating a strict vegan diet, they may show some deficiencies in B12 or vitamin D3 or vitamin D. And so you definitely want to get that supplemented. And so families may elect to do the multivitamin. They may have foods that are fortified with those nutrients as well.
Right. Okay. And I think it's a good point to make also that, no matter what diet you have, whether you're vegan or not, it's probably a good idea to, think about having a balanced diet for your kids and being worried about having those nutrients. But it's good to know that you can relax a little bit and not have to, plan out exactly what they're going to have and how many grams or milligrams of each nutrient that you need and kind of drive yourself crazy. It's just, have your variety of plants and you'll be okay.
Exactly. And if your child is growing, they're plotting out well on their growth curve. That's another thing. If they're developing normally, then you're doing well.
Okay. And then you did mention about anemia. I wonder if you can comment a little bit more about that because, a lot of people think that you need to have the animal protein in foods to get enough iron.
Yes. So, what's so interesting is that I've treated many children for anemia. Not one of those children has been vegan. All of those children have been from meat-eating families. And what I've seen is that a lot of those children are not eating a lot of green vegetables, if any, but they are eating a lot of dairy products, a lot of things like chicken nuggets, macaroni and cheese, things like that. One of the problems is that, and I won't go into it too much, it's a little bit more sciencey, but having a lot of dairy doesn't have any iron. It's not fortified with iron. And so having a lot of dairy actually encourages, or how would I say, kind of leads to a state of iron deficiency. And
Okay.
so, yeah. So when I talk with those parents, when I get those
Mm-hmm.
labs back, and I say, how much, milk is your child drinking? Oh, big cup in the morning, and then in
Mm-hmm.
between meals, and it's a lot of dairy. Um, and so actually, the more of the dark leafy greens that we're eating, the legumes, the higher our iron content is going to be just
Mm-hmm.
naturally. And so, no, you don't have to have a meat-heavy diet or an animal product-heavy diet to manage anemia or to treat it.
Okay. And then you also mentioned, is there a link between our diet and asthma and allergies, those that you mentioned
Yes.
earlier?
Yeah, so, research is always ongoing,
Mm-hmm.
but there have been some studies, and not even just studies, but even just some anecdotal, comments from families that I serve, who have
Mm-hmm.
seen, connections between dairy and their symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely cutting back on that, it's shown some improvement for them. And I say, well, if you don't need it, you don't have to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Children are thriving without it. They're not having their symptoms. They're not necessarily needing those medicines, so they're doing fine without it. We need not add it back in.
Great. Okay. So now we know vegan diet is very beneficial to the health, and it's also very safe for children to have. So let's talk about now implementing the vegan diet. Do you have any tips for parents who would like to transition their kids to the vegan diet?
Yes, so for many children, veggies may not taste very good. They may
Mm-hmm.
not be used to eating them. They may see it kind of like torture. So
Right.
so one of the first things that I recommend, of course, is when you make those changes, make sure that you're making it as a family. That way, no one person feels singled out.
Mm-hmm.
Children understand that we're just doing a healthier, we're living a healthier way. And one of the easiest ways I think that families can do it to get those veggies in is to
Mm-hmm.
start with smoothies. If you
Okay.
throw a handful of spinach, well, maybe 2 handfuls of spinach in a blender, throw some fruit in there, water. I
Mm-hmm.
put other things in my smoothies, but just to start, getting those greens in there, they won't even
Mm-hmm.
taste it and they get those nutrients. It is a great way to start. Also chopping up vegetables very small, adding
Okay.
it to soups or stews or things like that, kind of hiding it in there, but again, they're still getting those nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
And then also letting children help to select and help to prepare. Of course, you want to do things in a
Okay.
child friendly and safe manner, but
Mm-hmm.
children are often willing to try the things that they are a part of. So if you allow them to
Mm-hmm.
maybe pick a new vegetable or fruit, for this meal and, help me prepare it, let's wash it and, cut it up or, whatever, serve it. Children are a little bit more willing to try if they've been a part of it. So those are just a few little
Okay.
tips kind of to start.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And that's actually really good for just picky eaters in general, too.
Yes.
Great tips. And so what about you want to do this and you're talking with your pediatrician and maybe they're not so supportive. What advice do you have for that?
Yes, so, the good thing is that the world is changing, and so more
Mm-hmm.
and more people are adopting vegan and plant-based diets. And
Mm-hmm.
so as more people in medicine see the science support this, more of us will be on board. But of course, to get that support, I would say also lead by example. If you come in and you have this healthy, thriving child,
Mm-hmm.
and you just say, well, for X number of months or whatever, my child's been eating plant-based or my child's been eating vegan and this is what we do, your pediatrician
Mm-hmm.
is going to start to take notice like, this sounds pretty great. Tell me more about it. So I
Right.
think that kind of doing it that way, especially if you already have a relationship with your pediatrician, if it's a new pediatrician,
Mm-hmm.
also that can be a little bit challenging
Right.
because you don't really know this doctor just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also coming in and coming in to like be a partner and also to educate both ways. This is my lifestyle. I do want to tell you a little bit about it. This is what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
These are, these glowing reports from my previous doctor or, school reports that just kind of support, how well the child has been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And Also, like I said, understanding that it takes a little time for people to change their views.
Mm-hmm.
And if your pediatrician is not quite on board, give us time. Just give us time.
Right. And I'm actually wondering too, what made you decide to switch over from vegetarian to vegan and incorporate this into your practice?
Yeah, so, interestingly enough, I was already incorporating healthier eating
Mm-hmm.
in my practice. And even before I became vegan, it's really funny. I totally forgotten about this. I saw a mom at like a fair, like a neighborhood fair. And she mentioned to me that several years before, she had told me that her daughter didn't like drinking milk. And I told her, well, she doesn't need it. And this was years before I became vegan. I'm like, oh, I was already thinking this way. Okay, great. But I knew that the dairy wasn't the healthiest, but like many people, it was tough to get off of the dairy. And I read an article, and it wasn't any new information, but it just kind of made me make that change. And so, yeah, I've always been interested in the science of nutrition and how our diet affects our health. And I always knew that once I became a doctor, I would incorporate that into my practice.
Right. And that's so important. I know there's not a lot of nutrition education in medical school. So it's really always so lovely to see different doctors and dietitians incorporating plant-based diets into their practice.
Yes.
Okay, last couple of questions. So what about replacing like cheese and meat? Like, do you recommend using alternatives or just kind of sticking to plant-based foods like whole foods?
Yeah, so definitely I do recommend ultimately a whole food plant-based diet. So basically foods in their most natural state possible. However, for people who are transitioning, and then of course for like an occasional treat,
Right.
people may want to have some of the convenience foods, some of the like the vegan burgers or things like that. You may see I may have like a vegan ice cream or something every now and then, but then you'll see me with my greens.
Right.
So definitely I want people to have more of that whole food. But especially for people who transition, because it can be tough to go from eating the standard American diet to eating whole food plant-based. If people need that for their transition, it's okay. But definitely try to do more of the plants as you do that transition.
Okay, awesome. And so last question, do you have any other recommendations for a healthy lifestyle aside from diet?
Yes, so of course, sleep is important. Getting enough rest. Many of us lead very busy lifestyles. We may live with other family members, so sleeping in a quiet, dark room may not be always possible. But whenever we can, get rest. If you have access to clean water is extremely important. Stress relief, whether it just be like a 5 minute, just closing your eyes, or even 1 minute, whatever you have available. And of course, trying to limit our exposure to other substances, smoking, alcohol, things like that, soft drinks, and, just overall, just trying to be the healthiest possible. And also remembering that none of us are perfect. We're all works in progress, and being patient with ourselves. If we do something that may be a little bit less healthy, that's okay. Just get right back on track. And remember, overall, we're trying to be healthier.
Wow, that's actually a perfect way to end. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been wonderful advice, so helpful. That's the end of our interview for today. It was so nice having you on my show.
Thank you so much, Jen.
And thank you everyone for watching. Please see the description box below for links to Dr. Santiago's website and social media. See you next time on Vegan with Jen.